First cast missed one, second cast hooked up. He gonna jump. Found a little hard spot in the middle of some grass. Threw a couple baits over him that they weren't real happy about. One cast with a deep, tiny crankbait and got bit right away. So, where are you? There was clearly fish there. They just were not coming up to look at anything above them. Sometimes they're just, as they say, feeding down. Deep, tiny crankbait, kind of a citrus shad, I believe is what that's called, but it makes a great bluegill imitator in northern lakes too. So that's the one I put on, and fish number one. This crankbait, the lip on it is like so small that the vibration on it is really, really subtle. So when you get bit on it, there's like no mistaking a bite because the vibration is so subtle on it that you pick up every little blade of grass on it. You can totally feel the grass. And then when a fish just kind of slack lines you and you just feel that little tiny bit of vibration stop. There's no mistaken bites on it. Go. He chewed his way right up the tail. Just feel that little tick, tick, and then wait. Just a little fella. You both flip him, I think. That's one of the cool things about this tiny crankbait is it's a little bitty crankbait, like small, but it's got, get him back real quick. A little bitty crankbait, but it's got the hybrid trebles on it, which have an amazing gap on them, and they're ultra strong. So for a tiny little crankbait, it'll hook and hold great big fish. You can lean on them, you can pressure them. They do not come unhooked on that bait. Typically a little bitty crankbait has little bitty hooks on it. Not this one. The hooks on this one they're all business. Well, that one like smacked it. Those other bites were just kind of inhaled it, just got kind of heavy on it. That one actually smacked it. Another little fella. Yeah, that thin flat-sided bait is traditionally a cold water bait. They work year round. They really do. I like them in this situation because it's, with that tight wobble, they come through grass really, really well. And for some reason, that profile, the largemouth seem to really key in on it. That tight wiggle of this bait definitely seemed to trigger largemouth bites. And the nice thing about it is, I mean, if you want to burn this bait, you can burn it and it tracks perfectly straight. That one slack-lined it. Another little peanut. I almost always crank with 12-pound fluorocarbon. Slower reel. I like just kind of that consistent feel you get with the slower gear ratio. I'm one of the guys that if I want more speed, I just reel faster. But 12-pound fluorocarbon, I'd say 90% of my crank. On very, very rare occasions, if I need to get just a teeny bit of depth out of like a DT20 or a DT16, I will crank with 10, but almost always 12 and occasionally 14. If I'm cranking a lot of wood and depth isn't even an issue, or sometimes if I'm trying to take a little bit of depth off of a crankbait, I'll crank with a little bit heavier line, 14, but 95% of the time it's 12-pound fluorocarbon. Yeah, this particular crankbait comes, I almost missed that one. This particular crankbait comes in a deep version, which I'm throwing, deep tiny 7, and then it comes in a tiny 4, which is the shallower version, and they have basically the identical. It's a brown one. There's a smallie living amongst those largemouth. but that they have the same action, and a lot of times cranking, ooh, he spit something up. A lot of times cranking, you actually need to bump the cover for him to bite. It doesn't seem to be the case right now, but typically, you know, you've got a few extra bites once that bait comes off of the cover, whether you're ripping grass or fishing wood, or in this case, rock in the grass. But that's part of the reason why I'm throwing the 7 here. It's not that deep here. It's only about 3 feet deep, but it's that 7 gets down rather quickly to 3 feet deep, so I'm pretty much hitting that rock every time if I want to, as long as I make the right cast. If I was fishing like a 2-foot flat or something, I would definitely be throwing the regular tiny. Has the same action, casts the same awesome hooks on it. Tell you what, man, if you make that right cast, like right to the front of that leading big rock on the edge of the grasses, that's really where they are. If you miss it a little bit, sometimes you don't get bit, but if you make the right cast, they're sitting on the front of that thing. It was a little bit better. Yeah, this is the ideal situation for 360. For 360, right? We have very, very little wind. The structure that I'm fishing is directly in front of the boat, so I'm facing right towards it on spot lock. And when you're not moving, that 360 gives such a clear image and gives you, essentially it lines up your cast for you. You know, you look at that 360 just like the hands on a clock, and you know, right now I'm making a 2 o'clock cast, and that's exactly where that big boulder is that I need to hit. So the 360 really takes the guesswork out of it. A little bit better. Definitely chubby. It's not a super long one. Get that one back. You just get on that thing so nice.